lot of people in the travel industry love to throw around the word professionalism. But here's my question: what is it really? And how does that relate to the travel industry? That's what we're going to get into. So let's get started.
This is the Art of Selling Travel Podcast. And here to guide you through it all, your host, Glenda Beagle.
Years ago, and I mean decades, decades ago, when I first started in the industry, I was incredibly fortunate because back then, the majority of agencies did not hire unless you had a college degree in travel. Where I live in Alberta, Canada, that was dependent on which college or university, or I guess it'd be just colleges back then, that you attended, whether it was a 1-year program or a 2-year program. And there was a lot to be said, whether you were only a 1-year advisor or a 2-year. And now fast forward, anybody and everybody can sign up to become a travel advisor. They can pay their sign-up fee, sign a contract, and boom, there they are. They've done it. There is a definite difference in the industry between now and then. When I started, I really got more of what I guess you could call an apprenticeship factor. Randomly, I actually got hired to work at an office. When I applied for the ad, I did not know it was a travel agency. Now, ironically, I was actually signed up to go to college for a travel and tourism degree. And in like 3 weeks before I was supposed to leave, my mom said to me, "Are you actually going?" And I went, "No." And then lo and behold, I met my husband just a couple of weeks later, and the rest they say is history. Now, the best part is that when I applied for this job, it was a busy downtown office. That's all the ad said. It was going to be a receptionist. And so that's where I started. And that was more than 20 years ago. And I was only there a few months. I remember my very first day was on GST reconciliation day. And I thought, this is so beyond my scope. And yet there we were. I figured it out. I figured out a lot of things on the go with that job. And within a few months, one of the advisors was actually going to need to go on a maternity leave. And I had approached the owner and said, "Hey, is there any possibility you would consider me to be a junior advisor?" So by the time we were done that conversation, the only thing she said is, "We're going to cut the junior crap. You're either in or you're out." And so that is how I got started. I spent the next couple of months watching what the other advisors were doing, studying what they were doing, learning the product, learning the this, that, the other, and really getting into it from the ground up. The amount of education that's available now without needing that college degree is insanely different. I remember doing the Princess Cruise Academy, I think that's what it's called, back on dial-up. Yep. It was legit on dial-up because back then the owner did not believe in doing training with the suppliers online. She thought that was a waste of time. So I had to do it from home on dial-up outside of my work hours. And so it became one of these things that I was dedicated. I wanted to learn that. I wanted to grow my skills and grow my abilities and other such. And it came along bit by bit. Now, part of the reason why I'm saying all this is because there is a difference in the way education is done. There is a difference in the way people prioritize education. Back when I first started, the majority of education was actually done in person. The reps came to the office. We would all gather around a desk. The reps would pull out their laptop, or they would have all of the things printed off. And that's how they did it. It was a whole process of 1-to-1 or 1 to like 4 or 5 combat, if you will. That being said, it was about 20 years ago that I went on my very first FAM. And I remember the rules that were set out for that FAM like it was yesterday. Back then, it was no shorts that were, what was it? No shorter than like 2 inches above the knee, because it had to be professional. It could not be sweatpants shorts. You could not wear a tank top. It had to have sleeves, preferably a collar. Like there was a whole other world involved with that. And all of these things that went into it. My goodness, by the time I did my last fam, oh man, when would that have been? Like maybe 2017, 2018, I think. It was an entirely different experience. I was told right out of the gate, you do not sit on the bed. You do not sit on any of the furniture. When you're doing a site inspection of a room, you do not sit on the furniture. That does not matter if it is a cruise ship, if it is a hotel, if it is a whatever. You don't sit on the furniture. And I remember the last fam I went on, not only were they sitting on the furniture, the reason why they do that is because if you sit on the furniture, they have to call in housekeeping to remake up the room. Versus if you don't sit on anything, if you don't touch anything, then the room can still be used for a guest without having to send somebody back in to go do that. And not all site inspections are the same, but I've been on some where a resort will take you to 8, 9, 10 different room categories. If they have to send housekeeping to go and remake 10 different rooms, the cost of that site inspection becomes even more than what it was before. So it's a matter of you don't sit on the furniture. It's not a vacation. It is not a vacation. Actually, that was a comment that was said to me by a sales rep, a business development manager, actually, who had reached out to me and said, hey, could you do a FAM that is explaining the difference between a advisor rate and a FAM rate? And the difference is that a FAM is a business investment. It is a familiarization tour. It is not travel agents get cheap holidays. A FAM is designed as a sales tool for the travel advisor in order to be able to experience, see, touch, know everything they need to know about that property, about that destination, about that experience, whatever it may be. I remember doing, for example, I did a FAM. I want to say it was, I'm not going to say what guided company it was, but I really enjoyed it. But I want to say my investment was like $499. And it was, they took a 12-night tour, they pushed her down into 7. But that regular 12-night tour, I believe at that time sold for about, I want to say like $3,000 or $4,000 per person. So I'm paying like around 10 to 15% of the actual cost. Now, in addition to that, of course, there were some additional perks and benefits and, things like that that come along with it. Now, somebody has to make up that money. In this particular case, the Spanish board was with us. The Spain Tourism Board had traveled with us. There was also some media representatives on there and other such. I say all this to say it is not just about you getting a cheap vacation, but rather a company investing in you in order for them to see a return on investment. The idea is that as a travel professional, because back then that's what I did full time, I was a professional travel advisor. Actually, I owned an agency. And with that, they were bringing me on, one, so that I would share with the rest of my team what it was like, what it was about. 2, I was going to market it while I was there. I was posting content the whole time I was gone. I was talking about what I was experiencing. I was talking about how much fun it was. I was talking about all of the elements of it that I enjoyed, all of the reasons why I thought this would be a good choice and who I thought it would be a good choice for. The other part of it is how can I build up future business with this company and for my own business. And actually, it was as a result of having done this particular tour that I knew exactly when I was building Farms, Foods, and Factories, which was a group that we put together. I knew exactly which company we were going to do that tour with because of the experience that I had just had on this fam. They are a massive investment for the companies to make available to travel advisors in order to be able to go on. And so one of the questions that a lot of reps are getting, especially in 2026, 2027, beyond kind of thing, I'm sure that question is going to continue. Can I bring somebody? Can I bring a spouse? Can I bring a whatever? A fam is an investment in your sales skills. It is an investment in giving you the tools in order to be able to sell a destination, a travel style, or whatever, even better, more crystal clear, and other such. That investment that they're putting into that and in order to create it for that rate does not translate over to your guest. It does not matter that your best friend would be so much fun and this, that, the other, or your spouse, or your child, or your whatever. that investment needs to have a return on investment for each and every person that's on there. Now, another question I get a lot of times about FAMs, and I know that we're going to be talking about professionalism, and I might be on a little bit of a tangent at the moment, but it is so absolutely important to understand what a FAM is and what it's not. But also, too, one of the questions that I hear, one of the complaints that I hear is, well, of course, I've never sold it. I've never been able to experience it. Isn't it dumb that they're not going to let me on and I've never sold them before? That's a double-edged sword, because there is also a large portion of those same advisors who've never done the training with that supplier, who've never done the educational component in order to be able to understand them. Because the reality is, a significant number of companies are creating content in their education portion that is as close to actually experiencing it as you can get. I, with a travel advisor background, can assure you I have done a majority of the trainings that are out there. And while, yes, nothing will ever beat actually doing it in person, the amount of education, the amount of way that some of these companies will make you feel as though you were on there. When I had a team of independent travel advisors, I had one advisor in particular who would come at me constantly. Well, this is ridiculous, because back then, as the agency owner, I had to sign off in order for them to be able to get accepted on these tours. And when I did, I had one that approached me, wanted to do this one. And I said, no, I'm very sorry. I'm going to put one of the in-house people forward for it. And they got very angry with me about that. Well, how can I be expected to sell it? And I said, well, here's the reality. Have you done the educational component? Have you taken their certification? Now, I'm not big on certificates and everything being all over. And she said, no, why bother if they won't even let me travel with them? Here's the deal. You have to show, which again is a part of professionalism, that you have a degree of investment in this. See, professionalism isn't just getting to go on trips. Isn't just your branding, isn't just your logos, all of that. In fact, I would love to ask you, what does professionalism mean to you? I want you to take yourself out of it. In fact, don't even think about it in terms of your business at all. I want you to think about another industry, be it retail, be it professional services like a lawyer or a therapist or something like that. What does professionalism for them look like to you? Or what is your expectation of professionalism from somebody else in that industry look like for you? Because when we can define what does professionalism look like as a whole, as a blanket, it allows us to be able to better define it for ourselves in our own business. Now, there is a lot of truly unprofessional people in the industry. When you do go on a FAM, there is a good possibility you might discover one. In fact, actually, this was part of where this topic came from. Was my VA Becca? Shout out to Becca, who had suggested this topic because of what I was saying on last week's episode. We were talking about groups, and the one advisor showed up, and her people were saying, "Oh my goodness, the drunk in front of us was insane." And then that advisor had to be like, "Oh, hey, check out the other advisor on our trip." What does that look like to you? What does professionalism look like to you? Because is it falling down drunk? Is it obnoxious? And let's just be clear. Most drunks don't think they're obnoxious. Most drunks don't think they're falling down. Most drunks don't think they're drunks. That's kind of the problem, because our perception of ourselves is very skewed, particularly when we're impaired. Now, I am also going to, before we go any further, because I don't want this to come off as like a total soapbox moment or anything, I myself have chose not to drink. I used to have a social drink here and there and whatnot, but for a series of reasons, medical wise, health wise type thing, I have chose not to. So I do understand that I come into this conversation with a bias because of the fact that I don't drink. I haven't drank in a couple of years. That being said, I carried a very similar opinion of it even before. I was really more like a one or two. Actually, my very first fam, going back to my very first fam, it was actually the sales rep that was the fallen down drunk on that particular trip. I did not drink at all because I'm like, I'm in a foreign country. This is the first time. Like, this is like, I've never been anywhere like this. Like, I did not touch alcohol, period, that trip because I wanted to know exactly what was going on because I was felt so far out of my element. I actually remember we were leaving the airport going to the resort. This was like 20 some years ago. And I had been so excited to go on this trip. And as we were going through and cutting off traffic and just everything that was going on, I thought, oh crap, they sent me here to have me killed. Because the traffic was insanity. And even the next day, we were headed to do site inspections. And I said, I don't speak Spanish, but does that sign not say one way and pointing the other direction? And somebody else is like, yup. And it was like a one lane street or alley or whatever it was that we were in. And here we were meeting other people. So up onto the sidewalks, they both go. Like it was a whole thing. So no, I wanted to be completely clear. But I remember one night in particular that the rep, like the sales rep, the business development manager that was with us, we had walked across the beach to get back to our resort because the resorts were only like 3 or 4 apart. So we'd walk the beach, no big deal. But she goes, oh, there's the resort, and heads for the light, except the light was actually the moon reflecting in the ocean. And as the only sober person there, I had to go and escort her back out of the ocean because somebody's like, aren't you in the water? She's like, no, we have to go that way. That's where the light is. I see the light. Let's go. Are you kidding me? And that moment is ingrained in my brain 20 some years later. This person has a phenomenal job. They have climbed the ranks. They're with an entirely different company. And yet that, of all of their accolades, is the moment I remember about them. That moment, actually, every time I hear them speak at a conference, I pause and think, do I trust you? I actually was at a conference in Pennsylvania a couple of years ago, and I was chatting with a advisor there, and she was telling me that she really struggled to sell this one company. And I said, well, why? Because everything you've just described to me, because she was asking for help to sell a particular client. And I said, but everything you're telling me, this is the right product. And this is what she said to me. My sales rep was so drunk and they were still answering calls and they were wasted at this conference we were at. I can never, ever, ever trust that if my clients were in trouble, that my sales rep would ever be there to help me or that I could trust what was coming out of their mouth. These are the thoughts that people are having when stuff happens, when stuff goes sideways. You know, I've been on FAMs. I remember being in Disneyland where all sorts of shenanigans went on. And all I will say is that one of the young women had extra money in her wallet the next day and she could not remember where that money came from. But my roommate had told me the story. Yeah, I was a fuddy duddy. I had small kids. When I went on a FAM and we were done for the day, I was headed to bed. I was tired. But there was one heck of a party and there were some businessmen down there. I don't know what all happened. But I will say that when we were at the one airport and she opened her wallet and she's like, where did all this money come from? I know I've heard the story where the money came from. I also remember the first time I sent one of my team on a FAM. I felt so bad. It was a young mom that I had sent, and she spent her whole FAM helping her roommate to find the toilet in the middle of the night because the first night she couldn't find it. And my staff person, my advisor, had to clean the floor because somebody couldn't find the toilet. That's not professionalism. I don't care how good of an advisor you are. If this is the behavior when you are on a FAM, when you are on a work trip, that is not professionalism. And we're not even going to get into the stories of the hookups. I used to go to the owners' conferences. I remember one conference I actually didn't go on, but a friend of mine was messaging me from down there and she's like, you're never going to guess because this guy from this company was hooking up with that owner. And then the next night hooked up with that rep and everything else. And now everybody's crying because they each thought they were the, just know nothing you do in destination, on a fam, on anything is quiet. It's always going to get back. It's always going, like, you are establishing your reputation in these moments. People will remember this. And that's when we're talking about FAMs. The reality is, if this is how it is on a FAM, this is also how it is in other parts of your business. This is where it spills over because, again, what is a brand? What is a reputation? It's what people are saying when you're not in the room. It's not what they're saying in front of you. It's what they're saying when you're not in the room. That's where professionalism comes from. It's not the logos. It's not the certificates. It's not the number of hours you work. This actually came up in a coaching call the other day. And it's not to call that out in any stretch or anything, but to me, what it did is it led to a really good conversation because we had somebody on the call who works full-time in their business. They do not have an outside income. This is their exclusive business. And at the same time, I know at least two people that were on that call. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, actually, I believe they were both still working their day jobs while they were on our coaching call. And their businesses are phenomenal. They are off to the races. One of them, pardon me, is constantly posting how she's hitting top sales within a very large host agency. You don't do that by accident. So it really led to a conversation about the fact that being a professional travel advisor is not determined by the number of hours you put in, because there are also a lot of travel advisors who put in full-time hours, overtime, everything else, and are not actually churning a business. Instead, what they're doing is they're staying busy. So when you own a business, and this kind of goes back to the other part, maybe some of my notes are a little bit scattered, but when you own a business, you're representing a brand always. Even if you don't own it, you are still representing that brand. You're also representing the supplier. Now, where we get back to the amount of time, it's also that operational professionalism. Because remember how I said you can be full-time and still not be professional because you could be completely scattered. Does not help that in the current moment, my notes were not in order. That's just bad timing for that one. But when we're looking at operational professionalism, could somebody step into your role? Is your business a professional business? And what that means is, heaven forbid, something happened to you. Is your business organized enough that somebody else can step in and take over looking after your clients without skipping a beat? Would somebody else be able to go into your desk, look at it, and know what the next steps are? A professional is going to have their notes all done up. Professional is going to know where everything is at, and they're going to make sure that people are looked after. Now, what is professionalism? Well, here's what I consider professionalism to be: respect. Respect of your clients, respect of your suppliers, respect of your colleagues, respect of those around you. And it is also positioning yourself to be in a position where respect is granted. It's not demanded, it's not commanded, but rather that it is something that people give freely. They choose to respect you because of the way that you're carrying yourself, because of the way that you are communicating with yourself, with your clients. Communication is a very big part of professionalism. The attention, not just to detail, but the attention to your clients, yet also having boundaries. Professionalism is having professional boundaries. You do not have to be everything to everyone just to be a professional. In fact, having boundaries and setting parameters and saying, you know what, I think this is crossing a line. I think this goes beyond where we should be at. That is a set of being professionalism. Self-awareness, accountability, and responsibility. I want to remind you, you are responsible for significant moments in people's lives. You are spending significant amounts of their money. They need to know that you're going to take care of them. Are you doing consistent branding? Is it in alignment with the values? Branding is not just a logo. Branding is the way in which you present your business, present your offers, present yourself. Are they all consistent? Are you using the correct spelling? Are you taking that moment to slow down? Make sure you're spelling things correctly, making sure you're spelling the right names, make sure you're spelling the right cities. And do you follow up when promised? Now, here's the difference between professionalism and perfectionism. I know I just said like you spell things right, you have the detail. I also want to clarify that professionals are still going to make mistakes. It's inevitable because guess what? We are human. You are human. It's going to happen. But the difference between professional and perfect is that mistakes will happen. They're going to happen occasionally. You're going to have difficult situations arise. Being professional does not remove you from the human of life. It does not remove you from the humanness of travel. But what the difference is a professional will take responsibility when it's theirs to take. They will communicate and keep that line of communication open and clear. They're going to fix problems as they come in. Perfection is not the goal in all of this, but rather trust is. I want you to think about this for a moment. What are some of the expectations you've set for your clients? What do you want your clients to experience when they come? What do you want that level of expectation that your clients can count on every single time? What is that minimum? Because that's where you start to set your level of professionalism. How easy is it for a client to work with you? Are they able to easily contact you? How do they contact you? What does that look like? What does that communication channel look like? Is it a matter of making sure that you're keeping things confidential? Or is it just open channel where it's like, here, let's just chat in this group chat and everybody else can see what you're doing? What would a client say is your most professional trait? And if you aren't sure how to answer that one, go ahead and ask a couple of your friends or clients that you have around you. And then what would you say is your least professional? Professionalism is not demoed through how much you know. I want to say that again. It's not demonstrated through how much you know. It comes through how consistently that you deliver trust, clarity, reliability, and confidence. That's what your clients are looking for. Your clients are looking for someone they can trust, someone who is clear, someone who is reliable, and somebody who has enough confidence left over for them to borrow some. Clients don't just hire you to book destinations and to book logistics. They're hiring you because they trust you to do a better job and take care of them better than they could do it themselves. That's what they're looking for. And in order to have that level of trust, they want to work with a professional. Professionalism is not how many hours. It is not how many certificates. It is not how many times you can check off a box. Professionalism comes from how you make people feel. It comes from them being able to know that they can trust you, to count on you, to know that if there is an error and it is your fault, that you will take responsibility. Professionalism also in so many other places, it's making sure that you are not treating the sales, or not the sales, but like the reservations agents at whatever company you're working with, the supplier, that you're treating them with respect. particularly at the height of the pandemic, the messages that got put onto travel advisor lines and the amount of emails that went out that said, please stop disrespecting and abusing our staff astounded me. I get it. Tensions were high during that time. But here's the deal. Some of that attitude still has not left. There are still times that I'm hearing from suppliers about how abusive travel advisors are to their teams. That's not professional. Who can yell and abuse somebody more is not a sign of professionalism. Professionalism comes when we treat each other with respect, treat each other with compassion, humanity. And yes, absolutely, frustrations are going to happen. Heck, it is 2026. And if you think back, we're in the middle of June right now. What has happened in the last 5.5 months in the travel industry is freaking bananas. But we're all in it together. We don't need to take our frustrations and our anger out on somebody else. Instead, we need to work together. We need to do it from a place of professional respect, professional attitude, and professional responsibility. Being a travel advisor is genuinely one of the best careers out there. Does not mean that it is free of its issues. It is not free of things going wrong. We can't control what happens. We can't control if a war is going to happen. We can't control if a cartel is going to come in. We can't control if there's going to be fuel shortages. There's so many things we can't control. What a professional travel advisor can control is how they respond, how they react, whether or not they take a moment, take a breath, and reassure. There is a lot of conversation taking place in the industry right now. Should company A be allowed into consortia B? Should this be allowed here? Should this be allowed? These advisors are only all part-time. These advisors are all full-time. Whatever the combination is, the amount of hours you put in doesn't determine your professionalism. The way that you make people feel, the way you take care of your clients, those are the things that will determine whether or not you are genuinely a professional travel advisor. I'm going to leave it there. Until next time, happy selling.